Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Ryan with Rigs of Death Metal. Today, my guest is Dustin with Dipygus, Cosmic Reef Temple, and Vorlust. What's up, Dustin?
Hey man, how you doing?
Not too bad. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, man, me too.
Been jamming the new record a lot lately. Was the main reason I hit you up to do this interview because yeah, I was just floored with it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm glad you're into it.
Absolutely. And I'll admit I haven't had a chance to check out Cosmic Reef Temple. It looks interesting, but Vorlust is a super fun band too. Just kind of want to throw that out there. But
Cool, man.
I definitely want to talk about all three.
Nice.
Um, so obviously a gear page. So we'll go ahead and delve into the gear first and foremost and jump into all kinds of extra shit later.
Cool.
So are you how varied is your setup for the different bands, or is it kind of just whatever you're jamming on at that time applies for everything, or
That's kind of a hard one. There's no formula to it. It's like it's evolved over the years. Obviously with Cosmic Reef, well, yeah. So amp wise, so I play bass in Cosmic Reef Temple and guitar in Vorlust and Dipygus. So the bass setup's completely different. I have used similar distortion pedals with that have overlapped all three bands at one point, and then I've found stuff that works better and pulled it. And I'm always experimenting with it. And there's definitely there's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it other than like, oh, I like the way this sounds right now, and I have this pedal or I bought this pedal, and it's kind of an expanding canvas as time goes on, and I like it like that.
yeah. I've noticed just perusing your Instagram there, it seems like you have a little bit of affinity for like metal oriented strats. Even saw like the HM strat on there, which I'm a huge sucker for. I love any kind of super strat or modded strat, anything like that. That's my jam.
Oh
Um,
fuck, dude, they're the best. That's a great observation because that's my favorite. The S types are my that's totally my jam.
fuck yeah. Do you have like a coveted favorite?
That's hard. I think right now the coveted favorite is probably the 1989 HM Strat is. I've always really loved the way those things looked, and I never played one. I played the reissue at a Guitar Center, and I was like, this isn't that great. And then I was in Morro Bay, California, on a job, and I walked into a music store, and I saw the one that I ended up picking up was an '89, and I played it, and I was like, holy shit, I have to buy this. I don't know how I can't afford it, but I'm gonna fucking buy it because it was just awesome. It's got a 17-inch radius fretboard,
Oh
so it's like
wow.
an acoustic guitar. It's just the flattest, fastest neck you can imagine. It's absurd. It's just such an extreme design. So that one's sick. I like Charvels too. Like the Fender owned Charvels are great. I've got one of
Oh
those
yeah.
that I play in Dipygus, and it's like that's probably like that's probably the most like comfortable neck I've ever played. And yeah, I don't know, but there's so many great ones, and it's like I'm sure I'm gonna you know find one at some point that eclipses all those because it's a very versatile. Strats are very versatile.
Oh yeah. There it's what's I guess function over form
Yeah.
is maybe the expression. I'm probably fucking that up.
Well,
But
it's a fucking the double cutaway, right? So it's like
yeah.
it's like the original extreme guitar. It got fucking three pickups on there, five-way selector. Like, you know, that was pretty extreme for when it came out. And I think like, the form and function of it's evolved, but it's still a very like that when it came out, it was a pretty extreme thing. And, the two humbuckers putting floating bridges in there and everything like that is like I've played all sorts of like extreme pointy guitars, and it's like, man, if it's got two humbuckers and a floating bridge and a fast neck, like I can't tell any sort of sonic difference or playability. Like, and personally, I love the way the S type body shape looks. Like, I love that shit, man.
Sure.
That is a sexy body shape, man.
And I I think it's been over the last couple of years, I've had like this growing love for a lot of older, like, you know, first wave metal players using strats,
Mhm.
especially guys like Hank Sherman. Um, just Merciful Fate. I love that shit.
Yeah.
And I was it was funny. You mentioned kind of like how it was an extreme shape when it came out, and I saw a somewhat recent uh interview with Yngwie Malmsteen where he was
Mhm.
talking about, the shape was just so like alien when it came out. Like you had like the Les Paul, which is kind of like an acoustic shape in a way. So it's not really a super weird departure from what electric guitars have been to that point. But then the Strat came out and I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I mean, that those were like, there's some great players that have played them. A lot of my favorite players, um, were Strat players, but I'm not even sure that's what inspired me to do it. They've always just looked so cool to me. They're just great. I got that Charvel right here. Um, Pretty fucking nice,
yeah,
right? Just a
absolutely.
classic looking rock guitar, but it's got the Floyd Rose in there, and the two humbuckers, fucking super flat,
Oh
actually
yeah.
compact neck. Yeah, dude, I love these things.
It's hard to beat the classics. What kind of it looked like Duncans. What kind of Duncans do you have in those? Just the stock or do you swap them out or anything?
No, these are stock JBs. I think they're like the Trembuckers, pull piece
Yeah.
based one, but they're all stock. I haven't done anything to this guitar. This is a Japanese Charvel, so it's the San Dimas. I want to say it's 2011.
Okay, sick.
It's so nice, man. It plays like butter.
Hell yeah. Um, did you say dual JBs? Like got one in the neck too?
Oh no, I might have, but no, it's a 59 in the neck.
Oh,
But
okay, sick.
the JB that's just a perfect metal rock heavy pickup.
Oh, for
I love
sure.
the way those sound.
Yeah. I've got one, I think it's sitting in a drawer right now
Uh,
because I designated that guitar as like a pickup demo guitar, so it's constantly rotating. But
mm,
I had the JB in the bridge, then moved it to the neck to make room for another bridge pickup I was demoing.
yeah,
JBs actually work great as a neck pickup too. Like most people don't mess around or experiment with them, but yeah, they work for everything.
I
Really.
believe it, man. That I've yet to find a pickup that is as good as a JB. It's like it's such an obvious classic design, but and I've played a handful of pickups and they're cool and they might be better at a certain thing, but as an overall pickup, man, these things are amazing. I love them.
Absolutely. Um, Amp wise, what are we playing? Well, amp wise for guitar and for bass.
So I've never been like I've always had different amps throughout the years. And I guess I'll just go through like so Dipygus and Vorlust are both they're in different tunings, but it's extreme metal. It's high gain playing. So I pretty much the tonal setup I have for guitar in those two bands is more or less the same. That said, it's still it's constantly changing. So the amp I've been using right now for live stuff is a PV Triumph
Okay.
from probably the early 90s. I'm not really sure, but it just fell into my lap and it's a 50-watt super high gain kind of. I want to say it's kind of the blueprint for their like maybe not. I probably like the models that came right before the 5150. Um,
Like the
but like this,
Butcher.
maybe not the Butcher, but I'm blanking on the name. But there, it's like this. It's a really ridiculously high gain thing. But it was
Hmm.
pre 5150 or wasn't that quite that model. But I want to say it is kind of just the one of the early blueprints for just that kind of like crazy PV high gain stuff. And yeah, it rules. It's 50 watts, which is kind of weird because I've also played 100-watt amps, and you can move a lot of air, but you're always a little bit more into the like tonal range up front as opposed to volume. Like you can play with another person playing a 100-watt amp, but you're gonna be more of a textural player at 50 watts. But I really like that because they sound. I think they sound better than a lot of 100-watt really high gain amps because you can really crank the the post gain and get like that kind of breakup as well because you got to push them that high to compete. And
Yeah.
I've had a lot of fun doing that. Um, let's see. So I had a trainer. Fuck, what was it? It was a YGL 3A that I played in Dipygus for years, and that was like the exact opposite. This is like a 1972 like kind of Fender style amp, just complete clean, no breakup, headroom, and I love that thing. So it just really depends on like there's two extremes of amps I've had in the last like 5-6 years. So it's constantly changing.
Hell yeah. The trainers always interested me. I always just associated them with like paint peeling volume and clean headroom.
Oh yeah.
That that pretty fair description.
Absolutely. And then you throw an HM2 in front of it and it's a fucking death metal machine, It's great.
Hell yeah. I was kind of I always wanted a an Ampeg V4 for the same reason. Um maybe I need to try to shop around and find a trainer. I think they seem like they're a little less on everybody's radar than the V4 is these
Oh yeah.
days. So, um, oh, bass guitar wise, what are you playing?
So bass guitar wise, I'm at the full I'm fully bumming that rig.
Okay.
Sam is the guitar player of Dipygus, is kind of a he Cosmic Reef Temple is like it's a lot of that's a lot of his brainchild as well as the drummer of that band. I'm not an original member, and when I joined up, I was originally playing a like a Squire P bass or something like that, and pretty quick I just started playing Sam's bass that he had lying around, which was it was sick. It was like this. I don't remember the model, but it was a P bass style body. So again, the Strat body shape, right?
Yeah.
But it had this like hockey stick uh headstock thing going on. So it was
Hmm.
like definitely from like the probably the mid 80s or something like that. And it was so sick. And then he eventually Sam's a huge fan of aluminum neck guitars or just all aluminum guitars in general.
Yeah.
He built an aluminum necked P bass. I don't remember the company that built the neck, but it was like a forged aluminum neck, and I've been playing that the last oh god, I don't know. It's been a while since we've done anything live with that band, but it's been a few years. We tracked the last record using that one, and as far as amps go, Sam's got kind of a cool. It's got like a rack unit in there, but I can't remember the name of the company that made it. I know he built it. He was working for the company that Jewel. Yeah, he's got like the company's
Hmm.
called Jewel out of Santa Cruz, and I want to say I don't know if he designed it or anything, but he built the amp, and so it's like the preamp, Jewel preamp, and then some sort of power amp he's got in there. I think it's all solid state, but there could be a tube in the preamp one. I'm not really sure. It's really sick. It's a very clean, just a lot of volume bass amp.
Hell yeah. I'd never heard of it, Jewel before. I'll have to look that up too. Sounds sick. And for bass gear, I think we've been past the point of needing tubes in bass amps for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like solid state bass amps have been sick for I'd say a couple decades at least.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I'm coming around on guitar amps too. I've played some really sick solid state stuff with like, just like I don't really know anything about this, but I've been told like, oh, it's diode clipping in here, and it's not, it's kind of it's not what you would see in like your typical like all tube point to point stuff. And I'm like, when I was younger, that stuff was kind of not cool, but or what, at least in the culture I was growing up in. But then in later years, I've played through them, and I'm like, these are fucking great. These rule. Like,
Yeah.
you know, not that I don't love tubes, but I'm coming around to it in general. I think the whole solid state thing.
I there's so many great sounding solid state heads. Like everybody wants like the old solid state Ampeg stuff now. Especially like just and even like the Marshall valve state, which it's a hybrid, but whatever, or Randall. Um the problem always seems to be if a band like in a band context, one guy's tube, the other guy's solid state. The solid state guy always seems to kind of get drowned out a little bit. I don't know if it's a frequency or a volume thing or a little bit of both, but
Yeah.
uh, you know, technology's crazy. Maybe one of these days they'll make a solid state that's just as loud or louder than the tube amp.
Yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, most of my experience has been playing through recording in a recording context with that kind of stuff. And, might sound great, but it's like scooping mids, right? Oh, this sounds
Yeah.
sick in your bedroom. And then as soon as you do it with cymbals, it's like, oh, fuck, I can't hear anything. Sounds like a bee's nest.
Yeah. Yep. The eternal metal guitar player struggle.
I know.
It's like we want to scoop the mids, but you just can't.
Yeah. I don't know how I'm on the fence about that one too. I don't know. Like there's a I think there's a lot of not a lot of gray area when people are talking about scooping the mids. As far as I'm concerned, like a little like, there's something to be said about a little bit of scoop. But
Sure.
so like we did a little like for the last Dipygus record. Um but like I definitely think we scooped the mids a little bit more than we would have at least on my channel. I scooped the mids a little bit and was thinking about it. Like, yeah, that's a little bit more than I would have done like 3 years ago, but I think it sounds pretty good.
Now, when you're talking about scooping the mids, are you talking about on your amp or actually in the mixing process or a bit of both or
Just what I had the amp dialed into. Now, after that's been mixed and everything, who knows exactly what the
sure.
EQ profile looked like. But I remember trying to kind of get the tone in the room when we recorded it. And yeah, Matt was like, okay, hey, maybe try taking like bumping the knob back a little bit, and it sounded pretty good. And, you know, kind of keeping an open mind. I mean, we didn't cut the mids to zero, which I think a lot of people do, like treble on 10, bass on 10, mids on zero. Like it certainly wasn't that, but it was, as a ratio, it was a little scooped, and I think it sounds pretty sick.
Yeah. I mean, guitar is already a mid-range instrument. It's already sitting there, and depending on your cab and mic situation, uh, do you know what speakers you use? Like maybe V30s or something?
No, I mean, we used a Mesa 412 for the last Dipygus record.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I know. I don't know what speakers were in there.
Well, if it's a Mesa, likely like a Celestion V30 kind of thing. It's
Hmm.
just which is a very mid-forward speaker. And let's just say, they used a SM57 mic that has a mid spike to it, like
Hmm.
apparently. So there's already a ton of mid range in the signal there. So, sometimes scooping it out on the amp might actually be necessary, you know?
Sure, which is probably what the case was, because it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like you know Dimebag Daryl tone or anything like that.
Right.
Still like pretty, you know, it still has plenty of mid range in there
Absolutely. I mean,
without being bumped. You know what I mean? Like, because in the past I'd push my mids, just completely push them because that's what Oh, guitar's a mid range instrument, and
sure.
but it's like you said, there's so many other variables that you might not be doing yourself a favor by doing that.
Right. Like, when I had whenever I was gigging with, my old two-channel dual rectifier. I was cranking the shit out of the mids. I was pushing that more than anything else, but it's a pretty scoop sounding amp by itself. And, he's using the cab with the the G12K 100s, like the 100-watt Celestions, which
Mhm.
they're kind of scooped. So it's like I'm trying to compensate.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of variables for sure.
Right. Um, so kind of oh, I'm sorry. This is a question I always end up forgetting to ask, but people actually get upset. Um, uh, let's go with the Pygus, string gauge and tuning.
Oh man, I love that. That's like I am insane about that kind of stuff. I have a very particular setup. So let's say Dipygus, if I am recording or playing on the Charvel 25 and a half inch scale, right now I've got like a 50 as the low string, the thickest string, and a 9 as the thinnest string, and that's in drop C. So
Okay.
pretty fucking loose, about as loose as you can get while still making sound. Because I try to employ a very light touch when playing, so I like a very loose setup, and that goes for Vorlust as well. We're in B standard, and I'm using 54 through 11s on that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So also the cool thing about the Vorla, that HM Strat is not your typical scale length. It's a 25.1, which is between the
Hmm.
Gibson 24 and three quarters and the Fender 25 and a half. It's so that's even more slinky. It's like it's plays like a synth. It's awesome.
Wow.
The bass setup though, I started on bass, but in the last 10 years, I've really been more of a guitar player. So I'm a little less picky about bass. I don't play with a pick with bass. And that for some reason that the setup and the string gauge don't bother me as much when I'm using fingers as opposed to a pick. Sam is the exact opposite of my setup preferences. He likes super heavy, thick gauge strings, and because the bass is his, I'd imagine I don't know what gauge they are, but they're probably some ridiculously heavy. Again, it's hard for me to tell with basses. I'm doing less vibrato stuff. It's a different kind of feel, but it definitely doesn't feel slinky like I would have a guitar.
Right. Um, Sorry. Trying to almost process here. Okay. And Vorlus B standard and Dipygus drop C. It's
Yeah,
so funny. I thought Dipygus would have been the lower tuned of the two bands. Like just I guess it's just the tone kind of making the difference there really more than anything.
yeah, I've heard that a lot. Well, a lot of it's also just the tones we're going for in Dipygus are just so just kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? That it and it's a really tone heavy band, whereas Vorlust is a little bit more kind of your classic Marshall kind of almost more musical guitar tone, I think, than anything we've tried to do with the Pygus, at least for recording live. Again, it's not really like I don't use any. It's pretty much the same exact setup, but that's tuning makes a world of difference. And yeah, no, Vorlust is B standard. It's a lower tuning, but I hear what you're saying. Like the Pygus songs are just more soupy and loose, and so it kind of does feel like it would be like I've had people be like, well, I thought you guys tuned to like A or something. I'm like, no, dude, tuned to like it's really not that low, other than the C.
It seems like which I'm not saying it's same tone as like a lot of other bands, but the tone definitely puts me more in mind of something that like a band like I guess like Undeath or Frozen Soul or Outer Heaven, a lot of or throwing back like Incantation, like just that real kind of more sludgy kind of death metal tone, and I don't know why I always kind of struggle to dial that in myself. So it always kind of fascinates me whenever I see how radically different everybody's approach is to getting like a real thick, sludgy, heavy tone.
Yeah. A
And
lot of his bass too. If you're talking
yeah,
recordings, it's a lot. It's got you have to meld everything together. I think that's a really important kind of part of like that more, judging by the bands that you mentioned, like kind of this kind of, really very much drawing from like an old school death metal approach. And I think a lot of that is also like you're kind of trying to mimic something that wasn't totally developed at the time. You know what I mean? Like nowadays we have all these like we there's such a platform and a foundation for like finding these bands and being able to listen to them, and it's so well established. But in like the late 80s and early 90s, which I think a lot of the kind of old school revivalist people, including Dipygus, are, what you're trying to do isn't necessarily as established as it was in like thrash. It's like what was available to these guys to make those sounds. It might have been something that like your average producer would be, or mixer or whatever, engineer would be like, you can't fucking do that. You know what I mean? Like, have you heard anything that sounds like Horror of the Zombies from Impetigo? Like that it does. It's like the most ugly, almost mechanical, industrial sounding distortion, and it's like yeah, you can't fucking touch it because those guys were probably breaking all the rules doing that, and that's the cool part about it. So it's hard. It's hard to actually mimic something that would have been kind of an accident at the time. You know what I mean?
sure. Um, kind of pulling from your wide range of taste and influences here, everything from kind of more classical or traditional kind of metal to the more extreme stuff.
Mhm.
Um, what first got you into playing?
Well, I started on bass. Well, way back, I was taking piano lessons traditionally. But kind of what really got me into playing in bands and playing rock music was like 80s hardcore stuff like that, hardcore
Okay.
punk and whatnot. That was definitely the bridge to more underground, less commercial music, or just more artistically expressive stuff that wasn't like what was on MTV or whatever. So yeah, I started in punk, and was really influenced on that kind of more expressive, fast playing. That oh, you go to your friend's house and he shows you how to play bass, and then okay, we're in a band now. You know what I mean? We're gonna play fucking hardcore punk and be fast, and like that opened up a whole world of playing. As far as guitar, um, it's been kind of a weird progression because I always consider myself more of a bass player, even while I was playing guitar. Like even going back to like the early days of Dipygus, um, but everything from like in terms of metal, like the first song I learned on guitar was Boneyard by Impetigo. Was like my friend was like, we're gonna go play this at this like open mic in Monterey, and you're gonna play guitar because we already have this guy who's gonna play bass. I'm like, I don't know how to play guitar. He's like, here, you do this, you make a power chord. He showed me how to make a power chord, and it was like, okay, I play guitar now. So, but also just the stuff that really wanted to make me play like well and like really develop is it's a really wide range of stuff. Is a big fan of David Gilmour, Pink Floyd, and stuff like that. Like hearing that and being like, wow, that is really beautiful playing, and having an appreciation for stuff like that at a pretty young age was like I feel like David Gilmour and like Buck Dharma from Blue Oyster Cult are like probably my biggest influences on guitar. But in terms of metal, Autopsy, obviously, like fucking Autopsy solos are amazing and totally, you know, made made the foundation for what I want a lot of my solos to sound like. And it's hard to say because it's never just been like a linear thing. It's always been like I'm playing more bass now I'm playing more guitar, but it's really hard to say, man. Everything really, it's music in general. It's hard not to be inspired by it. Like it's always been a very like the inspiration from music and the like enjoyment are hand in hand. Like hearing a great song makes me want to go and pick my guitar up and write music.
So when you're well, first off, of your three active bands, which band are you the most involved in the songwriting process, would you say?
Dipygus for sure. Yeah, Dipygus is the longest band I've ever been in. We started in 2013, and I've consistently written the not all like we pretty much split it up between me, Dan, and Sam in terms of like riffs and whatnot. But when it first started, it was a combination of me and Dan writing riffs, and so yeah, definitely. I've written probably a little less than half the Dipygus discography, and um, yeah, a little bit of Cosmic Reef, but not a whole lot. My main guitar writing outlet is Dipygus for sure.
So what would you say, where would you say you pull inspiration when it comes to like riffing and songwriting with Dipygus?
Ooh, God, I would say probably a lot of Autopsy. At least from the beginning, Autopsy and Batigo, Coffins. That was how it started. Nowadays, it just really depends. Like when we did Wet Market, I was listening to a lot of Cannibal Corpse's The Bleeding, a lot of those minor third trills and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like early Cryptopsy. I remember very specifically when I was writing my contributions to that EP, it was a lot of the Cryptopsy demo and then the first record were like I listened to that shit like when I find stuff that I'm like really into, it's like I tend to like wear it out. You know what I mean? I'll listen to that record like multiple times a day for like a month, and that's like the death metal I'll listen to or whatever. Like I get really obsessive over very specific albums and bands, and it just depends. Like so, something that we really employed on the self-titled that I was consciously like telling Dan and Sam was Voivod, which is kind of because they're not a death metal band, but I was just when the writing process for the self-titled kind of started, I was listening to Dimension Hatros like just fucking every day all summer. It was in my brain and it was like affecting my riffing and jamming just in my bedroom. And well, pretty soon you got all these songs that are inspired by it. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
it's everything too. Like with solos, I'm inspired by like I love a lot of 70s rock and like you know kind of more like Guitar Hero 70s 80s stuff. Like it really depends. Like it's hard to say, a lot of stuff.
For sure. And what a funny coincidence, because I was literally watching a Voivod concert on YouTube like an hour ago.
Oh yeah.
So that's such funny timing.
Oh dude, that's fucking rule, man. I love that band.
Yeah. I'll check out some newer stuff here and there, but I always go back like um Killing Technology.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's my jam.
Yeah. Technology and Dimension Hatros are like it's like an consecutive run. Like they're just it's those are my favorite Voivod records for sure. It's the
Oh
peak.
yeah,
It's just such a great artistic point in that band.
for sure. Um, what would you say would be your goals, both, personally as a musician as well as with the various bands?
So something I really every band has different there's different circumstances going on in every band. So like right now, Vorlust is pretty active live. We're playing a lot. Last year we played like probably like 30 shows, which to me is a lot. I've never been a somebody who's I'm not on the road all that often. I've got a job and stuff like that, and I try to dedicate as much time into music as I can when I'm not at work, but got to pay the bills and whatnot. And Sonny's in Necrot and whatnot, and Marcel's got a bunch of projects going on too. And so, but either way, for me, like that band's really active live, and just it's cool to be able to flex that muscle, especially after COVID and all that crap, and being able to hit the ground running and play a lot of shows. But we recorded that record in 2021 and released it. So I think if there was like an overall pattern, I want to have output. Like as much as playing live is awesome, like Dipygus doesn't really have the opportunities to do it all that much anymore. We're spread out geographically. We are going on tour next month, which is going to be fucking rad because we haven't played together in like, at least a proper tour in a couple of years. And so like as an overarching, goal, I just think for me being in a band is such a art forward experience that I want everything that we do to have the staying power of an album, or some sort of physical release. I want to play live as much as possible, but what I really care about is releasing music, and having that end product is to me that's the most fulfilling part of being a musician. So Vorlust got a new record that we're writing right now while we're doing all these shows. Dipygus is going to go on tour, but obviously coming off the tail end of our third record. Cosmic Reef Temple has a record recorded and in the process of being released. And, it's good to be able to like say that out loud. Like, okay, all three projects are like, there's records coming out. We're not stagnating. We're playing in, the bands that do play live, play in new towns, don't only play local stuff, and, keep going, just write new music as long as you have that drive and it sounds good.
Hell yeah. Which congratulations on all three projects moving along like they are. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
man.
Um, before I forget, I meant to ask this earlier when we were discussing Cosmic Reef Temple. Because and this is kind of circling. This is our way of circling back around to gear, which you know. Um, you had mentioned that you were playing your friend's aluminum neck bass for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've never got to try one. I don't even know that many people, and we certainly don't get a whole lot of guests on here that play aluminum neck instruments. So, um, just out of my own morbid curiosity, do you notice any kind of differences in feel, response, tone, anything at all?
Yeah, so I don't know how much this would, because Cosmic Reef Temple is not the most distorted band out there, but there is still a good amount of gain on all string instruments. But something I do notice playing acoustically on that is it sounds very piano like. It's got a very clear, not warm, but not tinny and shitty either. I don't know if it's just it's like a high mids sort of thing. It just sounds very piano like and very musical. Um, Definitely a lot of um, neck dive, which is the one negative thing I think about a lot of those aluminum instruments, especially the forged aluminum stuff that isn't hollow. I'm not
Mm.
sure that neck on that particular bass is hollow or solid forged, but there is a little bit more neck dive than your average wooden instrument, which for some people is fine because you want to play more horizontally. I play way more at an angle just naturally. So it did
Same.
take, yeah, it takes a little bit to get used to that, but very fast, extremely smooth and fast. I really like the concept of things not getting, there's no truss rod in it, which is like, I like that a lot to be able to just not have to worry about your neck moving when you're going between environments or season changes and, really quality instrument, very smooth. I would be really interested in trying an aluminum six string as well, but I've yet to find one that kind of has the specs I'm looking for. I haven't seen a lot that have um, locking nuts or compound radiuses or anything like that, which is what I'd want to build if I was going to spend the money on it. But
Sure.
yeah, they're awesome, man. Like I'm fully intrigued by the whole aluminum neck thing.
Okay. I I follow several small like neck aluminum neck builders and stuff through the page, and I've been so curious, but haven't heard enough feedback to try to take a plunge. There's one that makes like kind of like I guess you could say like a drop-in replacement for Strats and like kind of shredder like bolt-on type guitars. So that one interests me a lot.
Oh
Um,
yeah, does it have a locking nut?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to go back and look.
Yeah,
I'll
a
I
lot of them do. It's hard to find. I've seen a couple, but it's nothing that stuck around in memory. But if you're gonna get like a super flat, shreddy neck, it's like, oh, you want that locking nut on there.
for sure. I wonder I wonder how easy it would be to to modify one. Like,
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's kind of like a headstock, you know, a step above the locking nut thing you could buy. I've seen stuff like that. But if you're gonna spend the money
yeah.
on it, it's like, you know, I want it to be perfect. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. Then I guess they also have the is it Kaler? They have it's not a locking nut, but it is a string lock
Yeah.
that it looks like a string tree that you put behind the nut on the headstock.
hmm That's
Yeah.
totally what I'm talking. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like after toward the tuners kind of like
Yeah,
auxiliary thing that like, you know, but yeah, I'm sure there's a way to do it, and
sure.
I have to play one, but in the future, I'm definitely, playing all of Sam's aluminum instruments
Yeah,
because he's quite a few of them. He's definitely got an affinity for that kind of stuff. And they definitely play great, and it's a really unique experience playing
hmm.
them.
The no trust rod thing really intrigues me too.
Yeah, I was like, you better get the neck relief right. You know what I mean? You better like that neck
Oh
relief
yeah,
truss rod, but it's that's kind of something that you know in guitar design that I've always been a little bit like, you know, again, I'm really like finicky about my setup, and I feel like I notice when my truss rod needs to be adjusted, and it always is just kind of like it's not a chore or anything, but I adjust my truss rod, and then it's like, okay, now I got to do the whole setup again, and it's a variable that I'm not like. That's why I'm very intrigued by aluminum instruments because it seems like it's a very modern way of addressing kind of that looseness of a wooden
yeah,
instrument setups and stuff.
for sure. I've seen a couple other brands do some cool workarounds too. Like, is it Vigier, the French brand? They use carbon fiber
Oh
as
yeah.
as opposed to like a standard truss rod. They just do and they call it something. It's like 70-10 or 10 cent. I don't know. Whatever the percentage of carbon fiber versus wood in the neck, that's the name of their
hmm
patent. Um, which I hear those are extremely trustworthy, but it's like had somebody on here. They had one and it was like you really need to make sure that you love, like you were saying. Love the neck relief, love the action. He's like, because it is like super, super, super low action, like a millimeter or less. So it is just like, like right there.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a kind of my kind of setup. Super low, millimeter or less. I don't know the exact number on mine, but it sounds kind of up my alley.
Right. I I just set up one of my guitars and I was like, you know what? I want to it came to me with a millimeter off the fretboard like crazy low and in standard tuning, but I wanted it in C sharp, and drop B. So I've had to tinker with it a little bit and finally got to back to that 1 millimeter of action with like proper tension and all that. And I'm just super stoked on it. So it's shredding just like whenever I first got it. But
Cool, man.
but um using a guitar pick and sliding it under the strings has been my best form of measurement.
Do you want it to stay or what or whatnot, or do you want it to fall out?
Just like barely glide under.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that's a good litmus test for sure.
right? Because I don't have any of the fancy little tools with like the different, different measurements or anything like that on it. So I just keep tweaking it and sliding a guitar pick underneath. But uh as far as your overall rig setup, I think we pretty much have established a lot of the stuff that's working for you, but is there anything that you are looking to change or improve upon? I mean, there's always like, gear acquisition syndrome where we just, see something really sick. Um, but is there anything that is resolving an issue that you're like wanting to look into, whether it be like a wireless or I don't know, just something to cut out some buzz out of your signal, what have you?
Sure. So right now, I mentioned before, I'm always kind of, it's never been like a very, I haven't had a specific amp that I've used or anything. And I've just kind of, acquired things that I like and they work at them in the time. I am having a head built for me right now by my friend John, who's got a company kind of, he's trying to get started called Audible Artifacts. Doing a lot of like, you know, kind of custom amp stuff, a lot of older point to point stuff that stays really true to its original design. He made me this TS808 pedal,
Oh, sick.
TS808 clone that I I just love it, man. It's like, the thing is as much as I have a pretty, broad, non-specific tone, I think the main thing that most extreme metal bands like, the foundation for like metal tone is a tube screamer going into a Marshall. The
Yeah.
tube screamer hitting the front end of a Marshall 800 is like, most of the stuff that I'm after, even if it's not super specific, I think is kind of off that model. And so he built me this pedal and he's building me this 800, kind of a 2203 clone that the amp is done, but we're just putting it into the cabinet that he also built. And that's going to come with Dipygus on the road. And like, to me, that's going to really kind of put an end to a lot of this like kind of gear acquisition stuff. Cause there's not a whole lot I'd want past that. You know what I mean? Everything I would want to do with both bands that I'm doing 6 string stuff, that's gonna accomplish that great. And I wish I had it here to show you, but it's just a great looking amp. It's this custom cabinet with Mercury transformers in there. It sounds awesome. It's got an effects loop in there too. Um, okay, so delay reverb. That's all I really do with solo tones and stuff on either band. And Michael Klein, Lonely Ghost,
Hell yeah.
it is the holy grail for solo tones. Amazing fucking pedal, delay. It's got the reverb on there, and then it's got the boost on the side, which was always a pain before I started using one of these to, you know, that little bump in volume when you're doing a solo live. It's night and day compared to the delay pedal I was using before, both in tone and the ability to have that boost just in one unit. It's so awesome. Throw it in an effects loop. It's like, yeah, I I don't need I can't imagine there's another delay out there that I would want to use more than that. Michael Klein is a fucking, super, yeah, fucking best delay reverb ever.
I
Love
say,
it.
I say we're huge Michael Klein supporters on this channel.
Yeah,
Um,
great.
I've had him on a guest on here. He's built me a handful of pedals. We're always talking about what the next thing is. I actually still need to get either one of those, or is it the Blood Ritual where it's like a boost chorus and a delay, I think. Just for
Oh yeah, yeah, man. I want to get the next Michael Klein thing I want to get is like I think the Bedroom Eyes chorus or something like that.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I need a good chorus, and I played through that on Wet Market on for Dipygus's Wet Market because Matt's got he's got a lot of Michael Klein stuff over there, and he's the one who turned me on to all his pedals and his work. And there's a lot of Michael Klein on the last, basically every Dipygus record since or release since our second records, just tons of Michael Klein effects on there, and yeah, great stuff.
Fuck yeah, absolutely. Um, Sonny has a couple. Actually, we were talking about him earlier today. He's got a couple that I'm really, really interested in. One, I haven't seen Michael make a whole lot of. That's the casket pedal.
Yeah,
Have you got to have you got to mess with any of those?
yeah, I've messed with the casket one that he's got.
The
Yeah,
painkiller.
yeah, the Painkiller one we used that was the lead tone on Wet Market was that in a Bedroom Eyes, and yeah, a couple other things, but those are the two that I remember that we used for that one. Yeah, the Painkiller's fucking awesome pedal.
Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for the Marshall Governor since I don't know, several years back when I found out that's what Carcass used for heart work. Um, but yeah, so that I'm definitely I know it's at least like in that ballpark, if not kind of like his take on the pedal itself. Um, Probably gonna sell. I got like a GV2, like the cheaper one that Marshall put out afterward. It's not nearly as cool.
Oh
Um,
yeah, they just reissued all that stuff too, huh? Like they might have reissued the Governor, like a proper Governor relatively recently. Have you seen that?
I have, and a buddy of mine did an AB versus like the old one, and says it's really really different. He's actually trying to find
Hmm.
somebody to mod it for him because it sounds. He said it sounds drastically different.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, which it's hard to tell if they even have like their old designs from the first run. Like they might have just been Marshall could just be approximating. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah,
it's
that's too
kind of
bad.
yeah. I was kind of hoping like, well, the values of the pots might be a little bit different, kind of like with amp companies like PV does a lot, It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, the bass knob might not be exactly where you would have it on the old one, but no, he says it's I don't know. I don't know. I'll reserve opinions until I actually get to try one, but
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I'm a big fan of those kind of that series. So Greg Wilkinson is a big he turned me on to the Marshall Drive Master. That's a big he had me use that on the first Dipygus record,
hmm
and since then that was kind of a I was always looking for one, and I eventually did find a Shred Master later down that I've been using for Dipygus stuff and Vorlust stuff, and that's such a great pedal too. It's like the Tube Screamer, and then that going into like that trainer, for instance, just a clean amp. It just sounds so goddamn good. It's amazing.
So sorry, the Shredmaster I think is sick too. That like that whole Marshall line of pedals is sick to me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
that's a great line of pedals, man. Those everything I've ever like. I've played the Shred Master and the Drive Master, and they're like, God, that's just Marshall in a box. So cool.
so in that situation, you'd be using that as like as your main distortion, and then kind of boosting it more with the Tube Screamer, and then running into a clean amp. Is that about right? Or
I mean, yeah, I've definitely done that. I do it with the higher gain stuff too. I've done it in front of our drummer's 800, which is what I use to track my guitars on the last Dipygus record. Yeah, it just depends. Like you can dial it back. For me, it's a textural thing. Like even if you're putting them in front of a really high gain amp, you just dial back the pre-gain on the amp and then dial the gain back a little bit on the pedal. And the Tube Screamer I use more as a way to, this is like not a technical way of describing tones or anything like that, but I really like a kind of a squishy uh reaction to like stuff
yeah,
like when I like palm muting, I want it to sound kind of squishy and wet, but not like in a reverb way. And I don't know if it's that kind of that mid spike that the Tube Screamers do, but it's a pretty noticeable difference, just to have that Tube Screamer. And I run the Tube Screamers like very, very mildly, just more of a like a response kind of thing as opposed to tone. Um, Unless it is a really, really clean amp, like the trainer I use, then I will adjust for that. But just about any amp you can get away with that because that gives you enough gain on tap between the two pedals that you could push it into a really clean amp and still have that adequate breakup, or you could kind of use it to just kind of enrich the sound of a already pretty hot amp. I think it's kind of going back to your question about what would I change. I think that's kind of the thing that I found that's kind of killed the need for me to like experiment too much further. That's basically the base plate of what I want is a hot amp that has kind of the squishy Tube Screamer feeling in response to it, but also, you know, pretty fucking saturated at the same time.
hell yeah. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up all my talking points except for our closer, which is I like to just get everybody's top four death metal bands and or albums. Just kind of
God, that's hard, man. Top four of all time or like right now?
uh I out of mercy, I normally just kind of,
Just in
guess
general.
yeah, I guess choice. Could be like what's most influential to you, like or like your own personal Mount Rushmore,
Sure.
you know?
So
But
so number one death metal record of all time is Autopsy's Mental Funeral. Um, I really like Altars of Madness. I'm just trying to stuff that got me into the genre that I keep coming back to. Altars of Madness, Soulside Journey by Dark Throne is like kind of like if Mental Funeral was you know tied up and put in a fucking industrial freezer. Such a record, definitely Dark Throne. Um, so that's three right there. I'm trying to think of top five, man. That's a hard one. Oh man. Yeah, those are definitely the top three that I think that like I've probably worn out the grooves on. I really like God, why am I blanking on the name here right now? Fuck. Too much pot. Oh God, what is it? It's a European band. Anyway, it's the ending quest is the name of the record. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the band. Oh God. Hold on. I can't believe I'm doing this.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. Horror of the Zombies. I'm trying to do these like in order. It's like I think about this kind of shit all the time and then I get asked about it. So Impetigo, Horror of the Zombies, another fucking one that definitely really inspired Dipygus. Um, great record. Hold on. No, I'm fucking can't believe I forgot the name of this fucking band. I love the band, dude. If you haven't heard them, they're so good. Gorment. Before I could even type it in, Gorment, The Ending Quest is such a killer record, man.
Okay.
Um, fucking Death Doom masterpiece, man. And then so that's four right there. Five. I'm trying to think of top five, like above all the other ones. Probably Nesbith by Demolich.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, stuff that's like completely like the stuff I heard first that changed it all for me. Oh God, that or shit. Oh man, yeah, we'll say that.
Okay. That'll
Yeah,
work. Killer list. And I fucking love Death Doom, so I'll have to check that out.
yeah,
Because I
Gorman, they're so killer, man. Like it's totally like I just found them on YouTube or whatever, like when I was like a teenager or whatever, and I it's such a good record.
sick. Well, Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time to come hang out with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everybody at home, make sure you go catch him out on the road, either with Vorlust, Dipygus, and I think you said uh, Cosmic Reef Temples. Did you say you guys were going to try to? I know you had the
Hope
record.
so, man. It's a lot. It's cosmic. It's same boat for Dipygus. We're all in different states and stuff like that.
Sure.
We're gonna drop, hopefully this year, and hopefully do a little bit of shows around that. And
Hell
but
yeah.
yeah,
Well, make sure you check out the records. I will include links down below for all three bands. Just keep tabs on everything Dustin's got coming out. This is all killer. Um, is that anything else that you want to tag on there, Dustin, or we pretty much covered it?
that's it. Hey, Dipygus coming out latter half of March across the West Coast. So if anyone wants to catch some fucking gnarly, grisly, fucking old school death metal. We're on tour with Anthropophagus from Massachusetts, who, in my honest opinion, probably made the best modern death metal record in the last 10 years. Abuse of a Corpse, check it out. It's insane.
Fuck yeah. Thank you again, Dustin. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Take it easy, man. Thanks.